Hey everybody, my name is Alex, part of the BZBGEAR tech support team. Today we're going to be setting up our AV over IP system with multiple transceivers, one of our pre-configured network switches along with its control box. Just as a side note, our network switches are pre-configured from us, so this will be a high-level overview of that. If you need any additional assistance, say setting up like a VLAN or anything like that, you may need to contact a network admin. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into it on the other side of the room. All right, so we've got everything unboxed and we've got our basic configuration that we're going to be using for this demo set up on our table. We've got a total of 10 transceivers. We've got our network switch and our control box, as well as a laptop to connect to our switch and to be able to configure it, and a TV, which right now is showing no signal for our control box to be able to show the splash screen that we're going to need our IP for, which is also not plugged in or turned on. So for basic configuration of our transceivers and however you're going to want to set these up, each transceiver has a transmitter receiver toggle on the back. So transmitter is in the up position, receiver is in the down position. So for this guy, where it's going to be a transmitter, so we're going to have it in the up position. And then transmitters are going to require a unique ID using the dip switches on the front. They just need to be different from one another. They can be completely random. Just make sure they're not the same. So that way the control box can tell which one is which. As far as receivers are concerned, if you want any of these to be able to talk to any of those, these will just be left in the up position or all 0. So that way, again, any transmitter can talk to any receiver. If you match or set these, they will only talk to what they're paired with. So if I set this dip switch to 1 and that receiver set to 1, that receiver will only be able to talk to this transmitter. For our switch, our recommendations are that it needs to be a layer 2 or layer 3 managed switch. It needs to be able to do about 1 gigabit of throughput per port. We recommend about 10 though for larger deployments. And you need to have features such as IGMP snooping, IGMP query, multicast forwarding, and we have a PDF on our website that explains all these features that we recommend for our switches. Obviously, the ones that we sell on our website will work for this, and we will pre-configure these for your deployments, so that way you don't actually have to worry about this, but we'll kind of go over it briefly as a high level and get this stuff rolling. So with that, let's get everything kind of hooked up and ready to go, and we'll log into the switch here and get programming. All right, so for our switch configuration, we need just basically a couple connections. We've got our laptop hooked up to it with Ethernet, and then we've also got our main internet feed plugged into one of the ports as well for the switch. So the first thing we need to do is be able to log into the switch. Is we're going to have to configure our laptop to be able to talk to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the bottom right, at least on a Windows computer, to our internet options, right click that and go to Open Network and Internet Settings. We're going to go to Change Adapter Options. In this case, we're using our Ethernet adapter, so we're going to right click on that one. We're going to go to Properties. We're going to go to Internet Protocol version 4, Properties again, and then we're going to set this to match the IP scheme of the switch. Now this may be different for the one that you're using, but in this case the default for that switch to access it is 192.168.0.4. So our scheme just needs to match that. It just can't be the same one. So what I'm going to change mine to is I'm going to do 192.168.0.5. I will click just in the subnet mask field and it'll auto-populate the mask that I need. And then the default gateway, I just need to change to match this guy. So I'm just going to change that third octet to 0. So it'll be 192.168.0.1. And then we're going to set a DNS, and we'll just use the everyone's favorite Google. So we'll do 8.8.8.8. And then we're just going to hit OK. We're going to hit confirm on this and hit yes. And we're going to close our window. What we'll notice is that it's going to start identifying, and we're going to drop connection from our network, and that's okay. The next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to minimize these windows and go to my web browser. And so we're going to type in our default web address for our switch. Again, yours might be different, but in our case it was 192.168.0.4. And that's going to bring up our login screen. So in my case, the default is admin admin, and it's going to bring me through some prompts. Once it loads. There it goes. All right, so the first thing, at least on the Luxul switch, it's going to have me change my password. So I'm going to just make a new password here and just click next. On the IP address screen, I'm going to leave this alone just for the sake of the demo, but you're going to want to change this to match whatever VLAN or network that you're currently using to be able to access this switch, so it's easier to access remotely. For now, I'm going to set it and just leave it as default, and just click next. Same thing with date and time. I'm just going to leave that alone as well. And then same thing with this system information. I'm just going to skip through all this stuff. Again, this is just kind of a high level setup. And so as we can see, it kicked me out, which is normal because I've changed the password to the switch. So I'm just going to hit enter again on here and have it log me back in with my new password. And now we're in our switch configuration, or we're ready to get going. The Luxul switch that we sell is going to automatically open the monitoring page, and we're going to actually just minimize this guy. We actually need to go to configuration instead. And then once we're in here, there's only a few settings that we really need to change to get our AV over IP system up and running. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to IPMC, and then we're going to go to IGMP snooping. And then we're going to go to basic configuration, and we just need to change some settings in here. The first thing we're going to do is enable snooping. We're going to uncheck the boxes for unregistered IPMC v4 flooding, and we're also going to uncheck the proxy one. The port related configuration, the only thing that we need to set is our router port, or basically what our feed is to the switch. So in my case, I'm going to set these two 25 and 26 as my router ports and just click save. Other configuration that you may need to do would be a VLAN configuration, especially if you're not using the default one. In my case, I'm going to continue to use just the VLAN one that's provided by me, because I'm just going to pass through our VLANs that we're using set by our controller in our office. So what I'm going to do, the only thing I need to change here is enable courier election. So I'm just going to check that one and hit save as well. And then the last thing I need to do is go down to my administration tab here and then go to configuration. And I want to save my startup config. So that way, if in case the power goes out or I need to power cycle the router, or the switch I should say, we don't lose any of our configuration and have to do this all over again. So I'm going to save my startup config, save configuration, and that's it. We should be ready to go here, and our everything should be set up as far as being ready to connect our control box, our transceivers, and everything like that. So we'll get that going here, and we'll start plugging everything in. All right, so with our switch configured, if you're using multiple VLANs on the same switch, just be aware of what ports you're plugging things into. In this case, we didn't configure any different VLANs on our switch, so they're all the same ones, so it doesn't really matter where I'm plugging things in, but we're just going to start plugging things in. The only thing that really matters is that the control box goes in last and powers on last, and it needs to have its HDMI and Ethernet plugged in before we power it. But we've got our receivers here, and so we're just going to start plugging these guys in into our switch, and they'll start to power on. So we're getting all these guys going, make them happy. And then hopefully you've already have your Ethernet cables already ran once you're at this stage. Otherwise you're going to have some cables that you need to run. And then we're going to plug in our transmitters. Again, these don't really matter in what order you plug these guys in. And that's pretty much it for those guys. When we're ready for our control box, what we're going to do is we're just going to plug our Ethernet in. Again, this guy is not PoE, so you'll plug the HDMI and your Ethernet in. If the HDMI is not plugged in when this unit turns on, you will not be able to see the splash screen, and you'll have to reboot it. And And then the main thing with the controller and then the transceivers is that they're all on the same VLAN, so they can all talk to each other. So once I got all that plugged in, again, the last thing I'm going to do is turn on the control box. So I'm just going to plug that in, screw in my power here, and it'll take a little bit for everything to turn on, but as we can kind of see on these TVs behind me now, we've got our splash screens from our receivers showing up, and then we've got our control box booting up here in the top right. And then let me stand out of the way over here. And then as we're looking at our TVs as they're booting, they'll say they're trying to find their transmitters. You may notice some stuff down here in the bottom left, along with some IP information down in the bottom right. That's normal. They shouldn't be linked. Sometimes you may see a link automatically out of the box. It just kind of happens. Sometimes people get lucky. But with our control box set up and logged in, we can see the information that we need to be able to log in and configure our system now. So it's grabbed an IP address from our network. We have a controller that's set to this VLAN that the switch is now feeding off of. So our IP address is going to be 192.168.30.172. And that's what we're going to use to access our controller and configure everything. So to be able to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to jump back to our laptop and then configure that so we're on the same network again as the rest of everything, and then we'll get this configured. All right, so now we've got everything plugged in and turned on, and then we've got our switch configured. Again, the only problem with leaving this as the default is that it's almost like an unmanaged switch at this point, where I'm going to have to directly plug into this switch to be able to manage things at the same time. But because my controller is on the same VLAN as my computer is the wireless, I don't actually have to change anything at this point if I really don't want to, but it's always a good practice to go back into your settings that you had changed and revert those back to normal. So I'm just going to go back into my adapter options, into my Ethernet controller here, and I'm going to go into my Internet Protocol version 4 properties, and then I'm just going to have this obtain a IP address directly from the switch instead. And as you can see, I'm picking up the same network now as my Wi-Fi, and we're ready to go as far as our configuration for our controllers. All right, so now that we've got everything hooked up and connected, let's kind of go over what we got again. So we've got 10 of our transceivers on the table. We've got 4 transmitters, we've got 6 receivers going to our 6 TVs behind us. We've got our Luxul switch that's been pre-configured, and then we also have our control box along with 4 sources. So the next thing we need to do is link everything together and link our receivers to transmitters. So how we're going to do that, and as you can see on the top TV behind me, from our control box, we have an HDMI connected to it. It's broadcasting our IP address. The control box from factory is set to DHCP, so it'll just grab an IP address from your switch or your network and broadcast it on here. So in our case, ours is 192.168.25.11. So with that information, we're going to go to our web browser and we're going to type this in. So again, it's 192.168.25.11, and we're going to follow that with port 8080. And that'll bring us to our login screen. We're going to log in with our default credentials, which is just admin, all lowercase for both, and just hit login. And we're on our mapping screen. So here on the mapping screen, we can see our transmitters and we can see our receivers along with some preview images. As the images refresh, you might see them flicker or change, but it kind of gives you at a glance view of what's going on. To pair your receivers and transmitters together, it's really simple. All you have to do is find the transmitter that you'd like to broadcast and just click and drag it to one of the TVs or displays on the right-hand side and just let go. It'll take a few seconds for it to respond to on the TV. You may see your TV go black, or even like a no signal will pop up, but that image will transfer over. Give ours a second here. And as you can see, we've got another one of our little cute dogs with a grayscale going around it. Also on this screen, we have some extra controls and things like that for your, to help discern what's going on. Down here in the bottom right on the transmitter right here, we can see that there's a little person with 3. That means it's hooked up to 3 different displays or receivers currently. So over here on the right, we can see 1, 2, and 3. And as we change this or take over other screens, you'll see that number change. So now it's 2, now we have 2 and 2 on this guy. We can also rename our receivers for easy identification along with our televisions. In this case, just by clicking the modify device or the little pencil that's on the screen. So in this case, if I wanted to change, say, this guy to something else, I can just say media player, for example. I'll just type that in, click apply and close. Our name's been changed on here. We also have some other features over here on the receiver side that allows us to identify, especially on like a video wall such as this, which TV is what. So if I wanted to identify this quickly, I can actually power off the receiver and the screen will go black just so I can see which one I'm talking about. So in that case, that was our TV6. And then I can turn it back on here and I'll get our image back here in a moment. Let that go and think about it, what it's done. All right, and we got Orlando Bloom back and a guy in a mask. Our video walls are also capable of, or I should say, our AV over IP system is capable of saving preset layouts for our mapping in its matrix mode. And so up here in the top right, all we have to do once we've configured all our TVs how we want them, we can actually just go up here to save as and then select one of these preset options here. So we can say save preset 1. Now if I go through everything and I start changing my TVs and I say, you know, I'm going to change these to like a bunch of them to be Xboxes as an example. Once these all switch over. Say this is like a sports bar scenario or something, you know, and I've got the Sunday night game coming on and it's pushing through these. All I have to do is pick the transceiver, we'll say it was the preset 1 on here, and it'll switch everything back to how we had it to either get, you know, all one image or multiple images, etc. It kind of makes it a lot easier to navigate and just kind of set everything. The next thing that our system can do is actually set video walls. So we'll go over here to our video wall option down here on the left-hand side, and it'll bring up our video wall preset selection. Video walls and setting this up is actually really simple. All we have to do is select one of our presets. So you can do up to 8 different video wall presets at one time. So in this case, we'll just pick preset 1 right now. We'll name this, so I want to see more of Orlando Bloom and I want to see him bigger, so we'll just say Blu-ray player over here. We will find our Blu-ray player in our transmitters right here, so I've already named it Blu-ray, so we'll just click that one, and then we'll change our wall size. So right now by default it's a 1x1 or just one TV. In this case I want to do a 2x2 or a total of 4 TVs, so I'll do 2x2 right here, and you'll see over here on the right hand side that we now have 4 TVs showing. And then all I have to do is find out or figure out which TVs I wanted to drag and where to place them. So I know which TVs are what on here. So my top middle TV is actually my TV2. So I'm going to put that in box 1, which is the top left. TV3 is going to be my top right TV. And then we've got TV5, which is going to be my bottom left. And then TV6, which is going to be my bottom right. And I'm just clicking and dragging, and these are just moving these to this configuration. And then what I'm going to do is just click Save. I get a little notification that my save was successful, and that's pretty much it. So to enable the video wall, all I have to do now is click Enable, and then my TVs will switch, although it may take a moment. And now we're in a video wall. You can kind of notice there's a little bit of screen distortion. Orlando's face looks kind of wonky. That's because the TVs in general have a bezel around it, the black border. and you'll need to do some bezel adjustments to account for that. On your TVs, what you can do is just click the name of your TV, and then you'll get a pop-up for top shift, bottom edge shift, left edge, and right edge. And we have some instruction videos on how to properly set this up, as well as if you check your manual, it'll have some suggestions about how to properly set this up. If you need further instructions or to adjust it, you can use these advanced options down here in the bottom. But be aware, this is meant for a more permanent setup, because if you use any other preset, it will lose these configurations and you'll have to do it all over again. So the recommended one is just by clicking these and saving it in the preset, but for a more permanent display, using the advanced options down on the bottom. And that's pretty much it as far as our video wall goes. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Again, you can have up to 8 of these things, and you can actually have these running simultaneously. So if you have multiple panels or walls set in different places, again, the system is highly expandable, so you can have up to, you know, even like a 25 by 25, or sorry, a 5 by 5 or 25 TVs total in one video wall. We have 6 here, so that's what we're working with. To disable the video wall, all you have to do is just click the disable button, but what you'll notice is that it's still going to hold that one source that we were broadcasting to it. Again, so it's all that same movie. If I want to change it, I'll go back to my mapping screen, and I can either recall a preset or to manually drag transmitters to receivers to set everything how I had it. So in this case, we'll just click our preset here again and kind of get these flickered back to what we had originally. Our next thing over here on the left-hand side is our OSD menu, or on-screen display. On-screen display is good, a good way to brand your broadcasts that you're showing on there. So in this case, we have some default things that are rainbows. And same thing as it was before, it's a lot of just clicking and dragging. So say our TV down there in the bottom left with Orlando running on it, say I don't want someone to steal our image or anything, I can drag our little rainbow over to that TV. It says OSD successful, and you can see a little rainbow over there on that screen now. And then just to disable it or turn it off, we just flick our little toggle switch right there and our rainbow disappears. If I want to be able to change the placement of my little rainbow or anything like that, I can hit the 3 little dots on here, and I can pick where this logo appears on here. I can shift, you know, where it is, how long it displays for. I can change transparency, etc. And once I'm done with all that stuff, I can hit apply. For now, I'm going to hit close, and I'm just going to turn it off because I actually don't want a rainbow on my image. The next thing, or the next menu, is going to be the event log. And in here, if you set it up for an email group, it'll email you in case of like a lost connection or loss of video. So it makes you know, maintaining your system a little bit easier. The last menu that is going to be relevant for most people is going to be the setup menu. And under here, we can see basically all of our receivers, all of our transmitters listed. We can see all their IP addresses, their MAC IDs, etc. The most common thing people are going to be using this menu for probably is going to be changing the scaling or forcing the receivers into a certain resolution. So we can identify our receivers by the RX under the type, TX for transmitter, RX for receiver. So say for TV5, I want to make sure that this is broadcasting in a certain resolution. All I have to do is click the little pencil right here for edit, scroll down, and I can see the scaling option right here. We have a few options. You have pass-through, which will just grab what's being shown. So if I've got a 4K Blu-ray player and the TV is capable of accepting 4K, it will pass that through. If for some reason I only have a 1080p TV over there and I want to make sure it's getting the best possible resolution, I can select, say, 1080p 60. And you can do that for however many number of receivers. You can leave them on pass-through. The system is smart enough to know which is which. And then once you're done, all you have to do is hit apply. You also have some other options down here to factory reset the control box or reboot it if you need to. All right, guys, so as you can see, that was a pretty easy setup for our AV over IP system from BZB Gear. We had 10 transceivers, 6 as receivers, 4 as transmitters. We also had one of our pre-configured network switches that we did a more in-depth set up on. Again, those will be pre-configured from us to you. Takes a lot of the hassle out of the way. If you need more assistance with that stuff, again, you may need to talk to a network admin about setting up VLANs and things like that to properly manage the system. And then we went over how to use the control box and effectively manage the AV over IP system, such as changing sources, pairing them with displays, setting up video walls, and things like that. If you have any problems, questions, concerns about this system, feel free to leave us a comment or shoot us an email, give us a call. We're always here to help, and we appreciate your support. So feel free to like and subscribe if you like this video or you need more content like this. We're always posting. And with that, we'll see you in the next one.